Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from IT Visualizer channel. We will continue our lab, Direct Alert Lab. This is the video number 22. I've been discussing in the previous video the following. We are continue working with securing our Windows 10 using the recommendations of the Department of Defense and the Defense Information System Agency of the United States. This is the video number 6. We have been working now for 5 parts. Or 5 video parts discussing the securing of Windows 10. So let's continue from where we have stopped the last time. The last time we have stopped at this recommendation 220805. Windows 10 must be configured to prioritize ECC curves with longer key lengths first. Okay, this is an encryption algorithm, okay, which are used widely in websites or securing websites, and also it's used in Bitcoin and electronic currency. Okay, so he's saying here that this kind of encryption, it's called ECC. This is something like RSA. It's one of the encryption algorithm used to decrypt and encrypt data for websites and decrypt and encrypt data for the electronic currency like Bitcoin and so on. So this kind of encryption use keys or encryption keys which are small or short. So we need to make a group policy to make this kind of algorithm use longer keys. What is ECC and what does it do? I will show you all something here from some of my searching about it. This is called elliptic curve cryptography. It's a key-based technique for encryption data. ECC focus on pairs of public and private keys or decryption and encryption of web traffic. Also, it's mainly used in internet. Okay, so ECC is frequently discussed in the context of Rivest, Shimar, and then this is a kind of another encryption algorithm which is always compared to ECC, because RSA is another encryption algorithm that is used widely, but the future is for ECC. So why is ECC is better than RSA? Because it's widely used as an encryption key. ECC is among the most commonly used implementation techniques for digital signatures in cryptocurrency. Okay, both Bitcoin and Ethereum apply the elliptic curve digital signature algorithm, okay, especially in signing transactions. So this is also used to sign transaction or secure transactions, and it's used in encrypting data for websites or in the web. And it's not only used as digital signature for cryptocurrency, but is also used as a standard encryption that is used by most web applications going forward due to its shorter key length and efficiency. Okay, so this kind of algorithm have shorter encryption keys, which means that they are faster in process, and they say it's more efficient. Anyway, so this is what is ECC. Okay, so what we need here, we need to make a group policy to make this kind of algorithm use longer encryption keys, not shorter. Okay, because longer encryption keys will be more secure. So let's go and see how we can do this. So let's continue, guys. Here we need to activate a group policy to make this encryption algorithm to use longer encryption keys. Okay, because as a default the Windows use this encryption algorithm but with shorter key lengths. Okay, first, so we need to make it more secure to use longer key encryption. So let's see how we can do this from a group policy perspective. So here we can see that if we need to know if this kind of encryption algorithm is already implemented in our system, we can go to the registry key and see this path and see if we have this value and the value type and this. So we need to see if we have something like this. If we don't have it, we can go and implement this kind of encryption. As we can see here, it's SSL configuration. So this is mainly used in web servers, and I think it's also used internally. If you are working with, for example, WSOS or internal websites, you can use this kind of encryption. So here we will enable it using the SSL configuration setting, enable curve order, and enable, and then we will type a couple of values, okay, in the ECC curve order. Okay, so I think these are two key encryption keys. I think these are depending on longer, or these are two long encryption keys. So let's see how we can do this. I think this will affect our communication with the websites internally. So if you have this enabled on your Windows 10 machine, I think maybe you need to test if you can, through a web browser, access most of the websites. Okay, I think this will affect this kind of activity. So let's see. First of all, we need to go to this key, local machine, software, policies, Microsoft, cryptography, I think, yes, cryptography, yes, configuration, and then SSL. Okay, and then let's see if we have this one, yes, and then see if we have ECC. We don't have anything here, so this means that this encryption algorithm is not used. So let's go and activate this, or communicate or work with this kind of encryption using the group policy. We need to go to computer configuration, administrative templates, and then begin activating this encryption algorithm. So here we will go, and I think from SSL configuration, ECC curve, and then we need to enable. Okay, and then we need to go and copy two keys, nest P384 and nest P256. I think these are two kind of keys or encryption keys. Okay, here we can see that he's saying here that default curve order. You can see that we have put the orders of the keys or the encryption keys in different order than the one default by the Windows. We can see here that it uses encryption key called curve 2259 and then nest 256, and then at the end nest 384. We can see here that we began with nest 384 and ended with nest 256. So, and we didn't use this kind of encryption keys. And here he's saying if you need to know if you are using or what this encryption key algorithm supports, or the keys that this encryption or algorithm supports, you need to type or search util and see display ECC curve. Okay, anyway, so we will do this in order. So the order of the encryption keys for ECC in Windows is not the way it should be. So this PDF says we need to reorder the ECC encryption keys. Okay, here we can see the other recommendation: simultaneous connection to the internet or a Windows domain must be limited. So here we are not allowed to have more than one connection to the internet while you are within the domain. So here we can see multiple network connections can provide additional attacks. So for example, if you have Wi-Fi and you have cable, so you cannot have these two connections simultaneously or to be working together on the same computer. You need to have the Wi-Fi. If it is open, then the cable should be closed, or if the cable is closed or the LAN is open, the Wi-Fi should be closed. So why is this? Because this, if you have two type of connections on one PC, this will make you vulnerable for attacks. Okay, so when both wired connections are available, this for example, the less preferred connection, typically wireless, will be disconnected. So we need to see here if we have, or the default behavior, if you have two connections, wired and wireless, the wired will be preferred on the wireless. Okay, so the wireless will be disconnected. If you have a computer and you have two connections, wired and wireless, the computer will choose the wired and disable the wireless. I think this is after we activate this policy. So we need to activate a policy to disable the Wi-Fi when the wired is, or the LAN is working, or the wired network is working, and disable the LAN when the wireless is network. So wireless network is working. So let's see how we can do this. We will configure a group policy called minimize the number of simultaneous connection to the internet or a Windows domain. Let's see here, and there is a couple of values. So we will open or activate this option. Okay, and we will put a value. Okay, these values will tell the computer which connection to choose, if he can prefer the wired over the wireless connection or prefer the wireless connection over the wired. Okay, so let's see how we can do this. First of all, we can go also to the registry and see this path, okay, and see if we have the value or the key of f minimize connections. If it is 1, this is not a finding. If it is 0, this is not a finding. If it's not there at all, then this is a finding. I think no, below. Okay, so the registry value does not exist, so this is not a finding. So if the key is not there, this is not a finding. If the key is value 1, then this is not a finding. If the key is 0, this is a finding. Okay, so if the key does not exist, this is not a finding. If the key exists with value 1, then this is not a finding. If the key exists with value 0, this is a finding. So let's see, go to the registry and see if we have this kind of configuration there. So let's go and see. We go to I think, let's see the path, Microsoft, and then I think we can go to Windows, and then when CCM local group policy. Okay, and then we don't have this key, so this is not a finding. We don't have it. Okay, so we don't have this value. Just a moment. So let's continue, guys. Here we need to minimize the number of simultaneous connections to the internet. So you need to only have one connection at a time. It could be a cable or could be a Wi-Fi. Okay, so we need to configure this group policy, and actually there is another group policy. It blocks any connection. Okay, so here we can see that this is the group policy: minimize the number of simultaneous connections to the internet or a Windows domain. So we need only to have either cable or Wi-Fi. And there is another one called prohibit connection to non-domain networks when connected to a domain. So if you are connected to a domain, any other connection to any other network will be prohibited. So these two are very important things to configure. So we will configure this using the group policy. So here we'll minimize it, and then we will enable, and then we have certain values here for minimize policy options. If the value is 0, this means that the computer can have more than one internet connection, so to have Wi-Fi and cable together. As for 1, here it will at least have one connection available, and he will prefer the Ethernet. So he will have the first connection, the Ethernet, and the second will be the WAN, and the rest is the cellular or the cell phone. Okay, so if you have 3 connections, what will be the most preferred one? The Ethernet. So if you don't have Ethernet and you have Wi-Fi and 3G or cellular, the Wi-Fi will be preferable, and the least one is the cellular. So you can use one to use the Ethernet as the first or the most preferred connection type. So let's see. So now we need to choose one. Okay, so the best practice is to leave it as one, or to not to configure it as a whole. Okay, this as the PDF says, or as the recommendations say. So Ethernet is always preferable when connected. Okay, so user can still manually connect to any network. This was previously the enabled state for the policy setting. Anyway, so we will choose the behavior of, or we will enable, and we'll make it 1, which is minimize simultaneous connections. Okay, this is the one, and this means that it will use the LAN, then the WAN, then the cellular or the cellular connection. Okay. So now we can configure this. So this is a very good option. And then let's continue. Connections to non-domain, this is the one that I'm talking about. Connections to non-domain networks when connected to a domain authenticated network must be blocked. So if you are connected to a domain and you are authenticated, or you have logged in with a user that is authenticated on the network, especially the domain network, you will not, or you will be blocked from accessing, for example, the Wi-Fi. So if you are connected to a domain network and you are authenticated by a user on this network, okay, are not allowed to connect to any other network, for example wireless or whatsoever. So this is good when you are connected to your domain network using LAN or using Ethernet. Any other connection will be blocked, especially if you have a laptop that have a Wi-Fi. So if you are connected to your domain network or to your work environment using a cable, any other kind of connections will be disabled, especially the Wi-Fi. And this is very secure, so not to have two connections, one of them, or actually if you have the Wi-Fi, it's vulnerable to attacks. Okay, so let's see this. So he is saying that additional attacks, if you have more than one connection, you will have a probability of attacking. Okay, so here we prohibit access to non-domain networks when connected to domain authenticated network. So you will not connect to any other network as you are connected to the domain. Okay, so here there is something called Wi-Fi Sense. This was in the earlier versions of Windows 10. Wi-Fi Sense, it's an option to automatically connect to known hotspots and networks. So it will connect automatically to known hotspots and networks. This is considered a security breach, and actually it was removed from Windows 10. It's no longer available from version 18.03 and up, I think. I have my Windows 10 LTSC 18.09, so Wi-Fi Sense is no longer available. If you have Windows versions older than version 18.03, you should disable this option. And by the way, 18.03, it's already expired, it already doesn't have any life cycle, or it's not supported by Microsoft anymore. The versions that are supported from Microsoft is Windows 10 19.09 and upper, okay, or more. So let's continue. So you don't need to do this option because it's not already there. But if you need to configure it, you need to first of all do it from a registry key. So you can do this from the registry, or you can do it from a group policy. Okay, so now we can go and check Wi-Fi manager config. Okay, so you need to check this. Okay, need to check a key auto connect allowed OEM, and need to have it as 0. We need to check and see this one. Go to wireless LAN and WLAN setting. Okay, this is the group policy. So here we will enable, okay, sorry, here we'll disable, because this allows Windows to automatically connect to suggested open hotspots. So we need to disable this group policy. This is from a group policy perspective. If you need to disable it from a registry key, you can do it as the PDF says. Okay, so we can go and disable this. Okay, and they say that Windows versions LTSB and LTSC doesn't have this kind of option. Okay, so, and it's no longer available, okay, in certain Windows versions. Okay, so this was removed later. Okay, so here we have command line data must be included in process creation events. What we mean by this? He's saying here we need to audit any command lines executed on the PC. So what we mean by this? Including data line for process will record the command line information with the process creation events in the log. This can provide additional detail when malware has run on a system. Okay, so for example, if a hacker or a malware uses the command line in the Windows to issue some commands to harm the PC, this should be recorded. Okay, so this should be recorded in the event log. So we need to validate or to enable an option or to enable audit to the command lines. Okay, and these command lines should be recorded, especially if there is a process creation. So we mean if there is a process created in the command line, this should be audited and recorded. So we will do this because some malware can use the command line to issue some commands to harm your PC. So we need to audit or to have a record of some process creation related to the command line program. Okay, so we need to go and tell him audit process creation, include command line process. But let me see something here, guys. We can go and see this in another way, in audit. So let's see this in our website. Let's close this one, and here ultimate, well, ultimate, okay, and then audit. Let's see how this is audit. Where is the audit policy? Audit, I think it's related to audit, audit system events. Okay, and then we need to go and audit not security state, not system state, integrity, IPsec, other object access, bottom line. No, I think it is somewhere not in this. Let me see where it resides. So I think it's in the audit system, maybe. Just a moment, let's see where it's there. So it is in system, audit, process creation, okay, command line. Okay, this is not in the audit. Okay, it is in another policy. Anyway, it's not in the audit policies, okay, but it is in system. Okay, so let's see how this will be enabled. So it's not in the audit. Okay, it's in the administrative templates. Okay, and then we have network, and then I think we can get it from here. Anyway, we can also do this using a registry key. So we can do this from a registry key line to go and add a registry key, or we can do it from the group policy. Here is the registry key, so we can have a look. The registry key is software, any and system audit. This is, or we can do it from a group policy perspective. So we can go to network, I think, yes, or system, yes, and then we go to audit process creation, include command line, and this is it. It says here that the policy setting determines what information is logged in security audit events when a new process has been created. So if there is a process created by the program of the command line, it should be recorded. Okay, this setting only applies when the audit process creation policy is enabled. Okay, so we need to enable this so it is recorded. Okay, so we need to enable this. Okay, so anyway, I think we have already discussed it. So, and actually it will be recorded in the security audits or security logs under the event of 4688. Okay, so a new process has been created. Maybe this refers to a command line process, okay, or a command line option process. Anyway, so we need to enable this option. So we enable it, okay, and then there is another thing. Windows 10 must be configured to enable remote, just a moment, remote host allows delegation of non-exportable credentials. This one, exportable version of this is provided to most when using credential delegation, which expose them to theft. Restricted admin mode or remote credential guards allow delegation of non-exportable credentials. I think he is talking about when you are using remote desktop, we need to protect the credentials typed in the remote desktop connection. Let's see what he is talking about. Here is saying that exportable version of credentials is provided to remote hosts. So when you connect to a host, okay, you can export the credentials used to access this remote host. Okay, when using credential delegation, which expose them to, anyway, let's see. I think we can read more about this group policy from the group policy console itself. So let's see what he's talking about, because actually I don't know what he's talking about in this one. To support restricted admin or remote credential guard. Okay, so he's saying that this is not available for LTSC Windows 10 versions 15.07 and 16.07. Anyway, so let's see credential. This is the group policy credential delegation. remote host allow delegation of non-exportable credentials. Let's see the explanation of this group policy. So here, this is the one. Let's open it, and here let's see what he's saying. Okay, if you enable this setting, the host support restricted admin or remote credential guard modes. Okay, provides. What is remote credential guard mode? Let's see. Remote credential guard mode. Remote credential guard explanation. So let's see here what we mean by this. So here this require remote. Okay, configured administrative system credential delegation that requires remote credential. This is the one that we are trying to implement. So remote credential guard wouldn't work prior to Windows Server 16 and Windows 10. Please see below. Remote credential guard. To use Windows Defender remote credential guard, the remote desktop client and the remote host must meet the requirement, or must meet these requirements. They must be running Windows 10 blah 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 to supply credentials sent to the remote. This allows users to run as different users without having to send credentials to the remote machine. Must be running. Also, this is not what I am seeing here. So let's have a look. What is the remote credential guard? How does the remote credential guard work? So, as illustrated, Windows Defender remote credential blocks NTLM. This is as an authentication protocol allowing only purpose. So this is used to only, it will block NTLM protocol, it will allow Kerberos protocol, prevent bypass PTH attacks, and also prevent use of credentials after disconnection. Okay, so let's see what this means. Protect remote guard. So this is the one we need to implement, or to make the Windows Defender protect our remote credentials used. So here let's see what we mean by this. So administrative credentials highly must be protected by Windows Defender credential to connect during remote desktop connection. If the target device is compromised, your credentials are not exposed, because both credentials and credentials diverts are never passed over the network to the target device. So here, what we mean by this, when you are connecting remotely to a machine, your credentials are not sent to the machine. Here is saying that we need to use the Windows Defender credential guard to protect our usernames and passwords used on remote desktop connection program. So he is saying, for example, administrative credentials that are used remotely, or during remote desktop connections or the remote desktop sessions, if the target or the machine we are using these credentials on remotely is compromised, your credentials are not exposed, because both credentials and credentials derivatives are never passed over the network to the target device. Okay, so this is, I think, what we need to do. Well, this is illustrated here. He is illustrating what are the remote desktop guards. So here is saying to us, so this group policy will protect our, so here allow remote delegation of remote host allow delegation of non-exportable credentials. If you enable this option, the host supports restricted admin or remote credential guard mode. So if you enable this policy, we will have our credentials used to be protected when we are working remotely. Okay, so this is what we call, or it will support remote credential guard. So you will not be able to connect using the remote desktop connection if the target machine doesn't support remote credential guard, or it doesn't support restrict host. So the host supports restricted admin or remote credential guard. I think this is what we mean by the host. Remote host allows delegation. Okay, so this we mean the remote host should have restricted admin or remote credential guard mode enabled. Let's see what is restricted admin mode. Restricted admin mode. What is restricted? Or this means if a malware or even a miscellaneous user is active on that remote server, your credentials will not be available on that remote desktop server for the malware to attack. So it is the same, or does the same function as remote credential guard. It protects your credentials because your credentials will not be sent to the target remote host machine. Okay, so this is the one what we talk about, restricted admin mode. So this group policy will enable or will protect our credentials used remotely over remote desktop connections or remote sessions. Okay, so this is what we mean by this, to protect our credentials when used remotely. And then we will have another recommendation: virtualization based security must be enabled on Windows 10 with the platform security level configured to secure boot or secure boot with direct memory access protection. So this is a kind of option enabled in the BIOS of the machine or the firmware of the machine that will help you to secure your operating system more. Especially you need to enable in the BIOS, or this feature when enabled in the BIOS, you should enable the option of secure boot and or secure boot with direct memory access protection. So he's saying here that some options to increase the security of the Windows, something like secure boot or a credential guard, all of these should have, or they will not be enabled unless you have something in the firmware of the machine called virtualization based security. So virtualization based security provides the platform for additional security features, credential guard and virtualization based protection of code integrity. Secure boot is the minimum security level with DMA providing additional memory protection. So we need to, if you have a machine, you need to go to the BIOS and enable the secure boot or secure boot with DMA protection. Okay, and these two will not be available unless you have something called virtualization based security. This is an option in the firmware or an option in the hardware of the machine. Okay, so let's see how we can do this, or how we can know if our hardware supports the virtualization based security. So if our hardware supports virtualization based security, we will have the option of secure boot and secure boot with DMA protection enabled. So let's see how we can do this. We need to check our machine to see if we have the virtualization based security. So let's see how we can do this. We need to go and check our machine, or go to the Windows 10 machine and see if we have the virtualization based security option in our BIOS or in our firmware or in our hardware. So we can know this by issuing a PowerShell command to see if we have availability of secure boot option or secure boot with DMA protection. Okay, so, and we will have also here the command will tell us if we have the virtualization based security option enabled. So the secure boot and the secure boot with DMA will not be available unless we have virtualization based security option enabled. So we need to check, we need to issue a command in the PowerShell to know if we have virtualization based security. So let's see this. I think this was repeated because we have done this before. The TPM and the UEFI, we have talked about this before, and the secure boot. So this is just revising it. So we need to go to the PowerShell and make sure that we have our virtualization based security option enabled on the machine, so we can use the other security features like Credential Guard and secure boot with direct memory access. Okay, so we need to issue this command and see the virtualization based security status. If it's available, if it's 2, then indicates that this option is running. Okay, so if anything other than 2, then that means that this option is not enabled. So let's go to the PowerShell and see if we have this kind of option or this kind of option enabled on our hardware of the machine. So let's see if we issue this option and press enter. Let's see here, we can see that virtualization based security, the option, this needs to be opened so we can have a lot of security features like Credential Guard and secure boot with direct memory access. Here you can see this is 0, so that means I don't have this option available or supported by my hardware. Okay, so I don't have virtualization based security. Okay, so this means that my machine doesn't support this kind of option, or I think it's closed. Maybe I need to open it, maybe. So you need to go to your BIOS and enable this virtualization based security. So I think maybe let me see if we can type here Lenovo I think 510 enable virtualization based security. Okay, so this is the steps to, let me see if we can enable it. I have virtualization enabled because I will not be able to use virtual machines unless I have this option enabled, but let me show you all how we can enable these options. If this is Lenovo, let's see here, let's see the virtualization options of the Lenovo. Let's wait for a moment. So here we can see that virtualization technology is disabled. You need to enable it, but I think there is other options we should enable. If we go to this one, for example, yes, enable, we have here Intel virtualization. I think this is it, maybe, but we can go further or we can go more. Anyway, so you need to enable this option from your hardware and it's not enabled. So this is a finding and required. So here we need to know if this virtualization based security is not available, all of the other options like secure boot and secure DMA. So secure boot is not, or secure boot is not available. This is what I mean about required security properties. If it's 2, that means that we have secure boot, so it is 0, we don't have secure boot. Or it is 3 if we have secure boot with DMA protection, so we don't have 2 or 3, we have it 0, so it's not there. So we don't have this option enabled. Okay, so this is a finding. You need to have the virtualization based security option enabled, so you can have secure boot. Okay, if you need to know what is secure boot, please refer to my previous videos or search on Google what is secure boot. Okay, secure boot is the way that you can secure booting of your operating system. Okay, some malware tweak or redirect your boot to another thing other than the operating system. So that we mean, or that we can protect this process by enabling the secure boot. Anyway, so we can go and we have from the command prompt or the PowerShell, we have known that we don't have the virtualization based security enabled. We can know also if we have this option enabled from the system summary. So we can see this also from another part or another way, and we can know this also from the registry key. So we can know all of this anyway. So let's see, or we can go to system summary, so we can go and configure or let's us confirm that we don't have the virtualized based security. So if we right click and run, and then we type sysinfo 32 or msinfo 32 and press OK. So if you go to the hardware, if you go for virtualization, if you can go down, if you go to the let's go down here. Here we have don't secure boot status not supported, so it means that our secure boot is not supported because we don't have the hardware to support secure boot. Okay, and DMA, this is the direct memory access. We have already the option of direct memory access, but we don't have the hardware to support the secure boot. Okay, so I think the secure boot you should have TPM or something, okay, another piece of hardware. So if you go down, let's see, we have secure boot not supported. So we need to go also and check the other things, something like device guard. So if the secure boot is not enabled, the device guard also I think will not be enabled. So let's check and see every one of these options. So I think it is paused. Let's see, go. So what if you have the hardware to enable these options? So you need to activate a group policy to make them on or to work with them. So here we can see that virtualization, here we can see that device encryption support, I don't have a TPM, so I don't have device encryption support because there is no TPM. Okay, and virtualization based security not enabled. Okay, so I think this should be I think I can enable it. Okay, anyway, so for the secure boot to work and for other options to work, we need to have the virtualization based security enabled. Okay, so I don't think I don't know how to enable virtualization based security. So let's see, to enable I think enable so let's go here. I think yes, we can enable it using a group policy. So it's not enabled, so let's see if we can enable it using a group policy. So here for example, I will not be able to use the credential guard or device credential guard because I don't have a TPM. So because this TPM will it should work with the device guard. If you don't have TPM, it will not work. So here you can see turn on virtualization based security. So this to enable virtualization based security with secure boot and secure boot with DMA. Okay, and then so let's see how we can enable this because the virtualization based security is not enabled. So let's see how we can enable it. Turn on virtualization based security, and then we tell him enable. Okay, here secure boot with DMA protection. Okay, this is the one we need to choose. Select from platform security level. So we can choose secure boot or secure boot and DMA. Okay, but here I think he's saying that through my machine that secure boot is not supported. So I think there is a problem with my hardware. Anyway, so if you have the hardware to enable secure boot, you should use this group policy to activate this option. Okay, so let's continue working. So we will leave secure boot and DMA protection, and then we need to have credential guard running on Windows 10 domain joined machine. Credential guard, this is an option in the Windows to encrypt your usernames and passwords used on your machine. Okay, and this will not work unless you have a TPM or another piece of hardware. Okay, because this piece of hardware will work in conjunction with the credential guard. So the credential guard is a way to secure your usernames and password on your machine. So any username and password used on your machine, it will be saved in the credential guard and it will be encrypted, and the encryption key will be saved to a piece of hardware on your motherboard called TPM. We have discussed before what is a TPM. Okay, it's Trusted Platform Module. Okay, so we need to make sure that the credential guard is enabled on all of our Windows 10 joined machines. Okay, and all of our Windows 10 joined machines, joined domain machines, should have the hardware or should have a TPM module in the motherboard. Okay, so we can enable the credential guard. Okay, anyway, so we'll continue, and we need to make sure that if, for example, if I need to know that the credential guard is not working or working, I need to go and issue a command on the PowerShell and see if it's running on my machine or not. Okay, and if it is not running, so if it is not running, we need to, so if I have the TPM and the option of the credential guard is not activated, we can activate it using a group policy. So first, let's see if my machine have the credential guard running. So you need to do this first. Okay, let's continue. I think we can go. Okay, so we need to go to the system information and see if the credential guard is working. Let's see, or if we can issue a command here again. So we can issue a command from the PowerShell or check it from the Windows setting, but we will issue a command in the PowerShell, run as administrator, and then right click and paste. Where is the credential guard? We can see that let's see here what he's talking about. He's taking that system summary. He's saying here, just a moment. So he's saying that okay, by the way, I think it's not enabled. Okay, so we need to tell him to I think credential guard. This is here, you can enable credential guard from here, the same one to turn on virtualization. So here, if I need to enable credential guard, the same group policy that turn on virtualization based security, you need to enable with UEFI lock for credential guard configuration. Okay, I think this is the option. So let's see how we can enable it. So if you have a TPM, you can enable credential guard from here. Okay, so you can here tell him credential guard enable with UEFI lock. Okay, so this is how we can enable the credential guard. Okay, because all of our users username and passwords, their encryption key will be saved to the TPM. And then we have another option to enable something called early launch anti-malware. This is an option that you also enable on your group policy to prevent hacking the boot sequence in the Windows. So this is to protect your Windows boot process. So normally when you boot or you open a machine and then boot, it goes to the Windows directly or to your operating system, but some malware redirects the boot process from booting to your operating system to booting to a completely different thing, maybe another website or maybe another system that is infected. Anyway, so by enabling this early launch anti-malware boot start driver initialization policy, this will help you or help your boot process. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so here is saying if you go again, or if you go up, I think we can go a little bit further down here. Okay, again, so here is saying that this early launch anti-malware option, this is what we enable in the group policy, ensure to be launched before. This is a software, a piece of software that will be enabled and will be running before the operating system boots, and its sole purpose is to ensure that none or any other third party will not interrupt the boot process to your operating system. So this is a software that will run, or it will begin before the booting process, and its sole purpose is to monitor the boot process. Okay, so it confirms that the boot process to your operating system is normal. Okay, and if it detects a malware trying to play with the boot process, it will block it. Okay, and it will detect it actually before it and prevent it from initializing. Okay, so this is it. Let's continue, and you can know this option is enabled from the registry, or you can know it, or if in the registry. If it's not in the registry, then you need to enable it using a group policy. So I am confident that this option is not enabled, so I will go and enable it directly from the group policy. So we'll go there. Here is the group policy, or I think I will check it from the registry first. Maybe. So you can go to the registry, early launch, okay, and see if we have this option enabled or not. So system, and then current control set, early launch. Then we don't have it here because there is a key here. It is saying that you need to have a key called driver load policy. Okay, so it's not there, so it's not enabled. So we need to enable it using a group policy. So that's it. So I think it's correct, but it's not there, it's not enabled. So I think we are close. Okay, we need to enable it using a group policy. We need to enable it using a group policy. Okay, so you can go down, and then what I'm doing here, I think I'm just returning back, or still seeing if it's enabled or not. I think it's not enabled. So I think maybe it's not there. So we need to go and enable it using the group policy, so we can go further. Okay, so here we will go and enable it from administrative templates, system, early launch malware, boot start, driver initialization policy, and enable with good, unknown, and bad but critical selected. I think this is it. So just a minute, what he's talking about here. Let me go further again. So thus we will close it and then go to the group policy. So we'll go group policy, and then we will enable early launch malware, and then enable it, and then choose good, unknown, and bad but critical. Okay, good, unknown, and bad but critical. So what does this say? Good, the driver has been signed and has not been tampered with, so it will continue booting with the operating system if all of the drivers of this operating system is signed, okay, and verified. Bad, the driver has been identified as a malware. It is recommended you do not allow known bad drivers to initialize. So if I think this is bad but required for boot. So if saying bad but required for boot, so here unknown, so good, he will enable or he will initialize the good drivers, but unknown and bad but critical will not pass. Okay, so bad, it's bad for but required for boot. This driver has been identified as malware, but the computer cannot successfully boot without loading this driver. Unknown, the driver was not being attested to your malware detection application as not being classified by the early launch. So choose the boot start that can be initialized. So you can boot with good drivers, you can boot with unknown drivers, and bad. I think we will not enable unknown and bad but critical anyway, so we will enable this option. Okay, and then we will continue working. Okay, here we need to have group policy objects reprocessed even if they are not changed. So what we mean by this? We mean by this that every now and then the group policy should be reapplied again or to be re-implemented again to the machine. Why is this? Because it suspects that if a hacker goes and changes the group policy or change something, the group policies need to be reapplied again. He is saying that enabling this setting, process even the group policy object has not been changed, ensures that the policy will be reprocessed even if none have been changed. This way, any unauthorized changes are forced to match the domain-based group policy setting again. So, if a hacker goes and changes the local group policy of the machine, okay, and he succeeds in doing this, reproducing or re-implementing the domain group policies will ensure that that this hacker or the local group policy will be not working and the domain group policy will be working. So this is one of the good things to be used or to be implemented. Make sure that the group policy objects are reprocessed, okay? Because if a hacker tries to change the local group policy of a machine, it will work for some time and then the domain group policy will be reapplied again. So we need to do this also from another group policy. So I think this is the registry key. You need to go and check if registry key is there, then that means that we apply this option. Or we can configure it using a group policy to configure registry policy processing to enable and select option process even the group policy objects has not changed. So this is the option. We need to do this. I think we are closing to the end. So here we will stop at this or we stop at this recommendation and continue working with the PDF in part 7. Hope this video informative to you all, and thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.